On a ranch, the rural routine was marked by hard work. There was a young, rough cowboy, shaped by the absence of his parents. One day, the ranch owner's daughter unexpectedly appears. When their cold gazes meet, their lives were about to change. Before hearing this exciting story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The sun had not yet risen on the horizon when Ethan Thompson was already up, gazing at the vastness of Hope Valley Ranch through the simple window of his wooden house. At 25, his youthful face bore early marks of a life dedicated to cattle and the land. His brown eyes, inherited from the mother he barely knew, reflected a mix of strength and melancholy that only those who grew up under the sternness of old Benjamin Thompson, his grandfather, could understand. The ranch was beginning to wake up as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in orange hues. The birdsong blended with the distant lowing of cattle, creating a familiar symphony that had accompanied his mornings since childhood. Ethan put on his faded plaid shirt, adjusted his time-worn hat, and headed out for another day of work. In the main corral, the other ranch hands were already preparing for the daily tasks. Among them was Liam Johnson, his closest friend and confidant during their rare moments of rest. "The boss is coming," Liam warned, adjusting his horse's saddle. "And he's not alone." William Carter, the owner of Hope Valley Ranch, was a man of imposing presence despite his 60 years. That morning, he arrived in his luxurious pickup truck, kicking up dust on the dirt road that cut through the property. Beside him, a young woman with a city-like appearance stepped out of the vehicle with visible discomfort, her expensive shoes immediately stained by the red dirt. "Olivia, welcome to Hope Valley Ranch," said William with a smile that couldn't hide a certain weariness. "This will be your home for the next 3 months." The young woman, who couldn't have been more than 22, looked around with an expression that mixed disdain and resignation. Her long, perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, and designer clothes stood in stark contrast to the rural setting. "Dad, you can't be serious," she protested, adjusting her branded sunglasses. 3 months here, I'll go crazy." Ethan discreetly observed the scene, continuing his work of checking the nearby fences. Something about the girl's arrogant demeanor deeply bothered him, reminding him of the reasons he preferred the company of animals to that of humans. "Olivia, we've already talked about this," William replied firmly. "You need to learn the value of work and responsibility. Your extravagances in the city have gone too far. Here you'll learn the true meaning of earning your own keep." The discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Sophia Martinez, the ranch's manager. At 35, Sophia was known for her efficiency and dedication to her work. Her green eyes sparkled, peculiarly as they landed on Ethan, who pretended not to notice. "Mr. William, I'm glad you're here," said Sophia, approaching with her ever-present clipboard. "We have some important matters to discuss regarding the new cattle shipment. Sophia, please show my daughter to her accommodations," William requested. "And Olivia, I want you ready to start work early tomorrow morning." Without discussion, Olivia huffed, dragging her designer suitcase through the dirt with difficulty. Sophia approached to help her but was met with a sharp look from the young woman. "I can very well carry my own things, thank you." Ethan couldn't help but smirk at the scene. The big city really had the power to turn people into creatures completely out of touch with reality. His thoughts were interrupted by the deep voice of his grandfather, who was approaching on his spotted horse. "Boy, stop standing there watching the commotion and go check on the cattle in the north pasture," ordered Benjamin, his voice carrying its usual authority. "Work waits for no one." As he mounted his horse, Ethan could still hear Olivia's protests echoing across the ranch yard. Something told him that the arrival of that young woman would change the quiet routine of Hope Valley Ranch, and not necessarily for the better. The day went on as usual, but there was something different in the air. The ranch hands whispered among themselves about the arrival of the city princess, as they had already nicknamed Olivia. Liam, always bolder in his comments, didn't miss the chance to tease his friend during lunch in the barn. "So Ethan, what do you think of our new co-worker?" he asked with a mischievous grin. "I bet she won't last a week here." Ethan maintained his usual silence, but couldn't help thinking about the irony of the situation. He who had grown up knowing every inch of that land, every secret of handling the animals, would now have to coexist with someone who had probably never set foot on dirt in her life. By late afternoon, as the sun prepared to set, Ethan watched. From a distance as Olivia sat on the porch of the main house, absorbed in her phone. For a brief moment their eyes met, and he noticed something beyond her initial arrogance, perhaps a flicker of fear or insecurity. Sophia suddenly appeared by his side, interrupting his thoughts. "Tomorrow I want you supervising her work," she said, in a tone that brooked no argument. "Show her how things work around here." "Why me?" Ethan asked, furrowing his brow. "Because you're the best ranch hand we have," Sophia replied, her tone softening slightly. "And also the most patient. You're going to need a lot of patience with her." As he rode back to his house at the end of the day, Ethan reflected on the changes that this unexpected arrival might bring. The gentle night breeze carried the scent of damp earth, and the stars began to dot the dark sky. Somehow he knew that his life at Hope Valley Ranch would never be the same after Olivia's arrival. Dawn arrived with the promise of a particularly hot day at Hope Valley Ranch. Olivia tossed and turned in her bed, trying to ignore the shrill crowing of the roosters announcing the morning. Her room in the main house, though comfortable, was far from the luxury of her apartment in the city. The wooden walls and rustic decor seemed to mock her current situation. When she finally decided to get up, it was already past 7 in the morning. She dressed in what she considered appropriate workwear for the countryside, designer jeans and a white t-shirt that cost the equivalent of a ranch hand's monthly salary. He completed the look with a pair of boots he had never worn before, bought in a rush before his forced trip. In the kitchen, Margaret Brown, the cook who had worked for the family for decades, was already preparing breakfast. The aroma of fresh coffee and homemade bread filled the air, but Olivia barely touched the food, accustomed to her strict diets and detox juices. "Girl, you need to eat properly to handle the work," advised Margaret, with the wisdom of her 70 years. "It's not like the city here." Olivia was about to respond when Ethan appeared at the kitchen door. His tall, commanding presence and serious expression caused a strange unease in her. "You're late," he said bluntly. "Work starts at sunrise." "No one told me about the schedule," Olivia retorted, standing up in irritation. "And who are you to give me orders?" "I'm the person assigned to teach you the work on the ranch," he replied calmly. "And your first lesson is about punctuality." Reluctantly, Olivia followed Ethan to the barn. The sun was already high and the heat was beginning to intensify. Her perfectly brushed hair soon began to stick to her neck, and she bitterly regretted not bringing a hair tie to keep it up. "First task of the day, clean the barn," Ethan announced, handing her a shovel. "You must be joking," Olivia protested, looking in horror at the tool in her hands. "I didn't come here to be treated like some servant." Ethan stared at her with a mix of irritation and amusement. "Here, everyone works. There's no such thing as lesser or greater work, only necessary work. If you want meat on your plate, someone has to take care of the cattle. If you want a clean place for the animals, someone has to clean." His words, though harsh, carried a truth Olivia had never considered. Still, her stubbornness spoke louder. "My father will hear about this." "Your father approved your activity schedule," Ethan replied, impassively. "Now if you prefer to stand around complaining, the sun will only get hotter." Reluctantly, Olivia began to work. Her movements were clumsy, and soon her delicate hands began to form blisters. Sweat dripped down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. Liam Johnson, who was working nearby, watched the scene with an amused smile. "So hey, princess, be careful not to break a nail," he teased, receiving a disapproving look from Ethan. The hours dragged on, and Olivia felt every muscle in her body protest. Never in her life had she done such intense physical labor. Her Pilates and gym sessions at the most exclusive club in the city seemed like child's play compared to this. During lunch, served in the barn alongside the other workers, Olivia could barely hold her utensils. Sitting in an isolated corner, she observed with a mix of fascination and disgust the simplicity of the meal: rice, beans, meat, and vegetables from the ranch's garden. Sophia appeared to oversee the progress of the work, her eyes always attentive to every detail. "How is our new employee doing?" she asked Ethan in a tone Olivia couldn't quite decipher. "Surviving," he replied dryly. In the afternoon, Ethan decided to change Olivia's routine. He took her to the stable where a gentle mare awaited. "You need to learn how to ride," he declared. "You can't work on a ranch without knowing how to handle horses." "I already know how to ride," Olivia replied proudly. "I took lessons at the club since I was little." Ethan raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Riding in an arena isn't the same as riding in the field. Here the horse is your work companion, not a leisure accessory." The riding lesson proved to be even more challenging than cleaning the barn. The Western saddle was different from what Olivia was used to, and the commands needed to be firmer and more precise. To her surprise, Ethan turned out to be a patient teacher, explaining every detail clearly. "Keep your back straight," he instructed. "The horse senses your insecurity. Trust him and he'll trust you." By the end of the day, as the sun set on the horizon, Olivia was exhausted, dirty and sore. Her expensive clothes were ruined, and her pride was as bruised as her hands. "Tomorrow we start earlier," Ethan warned before saying goodbye. "And where? Something more appropriate. This isn't the place for designer labels." Back in her room, Olivia collapsed onto the bed without even taking a shower. Her hands trembled as she typed a message to her city friends, recounting her day in hell. Yet something strange was happening. Mixed with the exhaustion and indignation, there was a small sense of accomplishment she couldn't quite explain. Outside, Ethan was talking to his grandfather on the porch of their simple home. "How was the first day with the city girl?" asked old Benjamin, lighting his pipe. "It's going to be harder than I imagined," Ethan replied, watching the first stars appear in the sky. "But something tells me there's more to her than meets the eye." Benjamin exhaled a puff of smoke, an enigmatic smile on his wrinkled lips. "The best transformations start with the greatest resistance, my grandson. Give it time." Olivia's first week at the ranch passed like a whirlwind of discoveries and challenges. Every muscle in her body protested against the heavy labor, but, surprisingly, she was beginning to develop a routine. She woke up before sunrise, not by choice, but because the noise of the animals and the movement of the workers made it impossible to keep sleeping. On that particular morning, something different happened. As she headed to the barn, Olivia found Ethan feeding a newborn calf with a bottle. The scene caught her off guard. There was a softness in his gaze that she had never noticed before. "Want to give it a try?" he asked, noticing her presence. Olivia hesitated. Her nails, once perfectly manicured, were now short and polish-free, adapted to her new reality. "I don't know if—" "Come here," he called, with an unusual gentleness in his voice. "It's not hard." Approaching cautiously, Olivia took the bottle from Ethan's hands. Their fingers brushed briefly, sending a strange electric current through her body. The calf, eager, began to suckle the milk vigorously. "Why is he being fed like this?" she asked, genuinely curious. "His mother had complications during birth," Ethan explained. "She's too weak to nurse him. Here at the ranch, we don't abandon anyone." Something in the way he said those last words caught Olivia's attention. There was a story there, hidden between the unspoken words. The day continued with the usual tasks, but Olivia began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed, like the way Liam always arrived early to feed the horses, humming old songs, or how Margaret would set aside an extra piece of cake for Benjamin, Ethan's grandfather, even when he didn't ask for it. During lunch, Sophia appeared in the barn with news. "We're having a party at the ranch next weekend," she announced. "It's a tradition to celebrate the start of the harvest." Olivia's eyes lit up at the mention of a party, even if it was something completely different from the nightlife she was used to in the city. "What kind of party?" she asked, trying not to show too much interest. "A typical one," Sophia replied, giving Ethan a meaningful look. "With music, food and dancing, everyone participates." "Everyone," Liam emphasized, laughing. "Even Ethan, who only dances after a lot of convincing." Olivia couldn't help but smile at the thought of the serious Ethan dancing. There was so much she didn't know about these people who were gradually becoming part of her life. In the afternoon, while helping in the garden, a task she had surprisingly learned to appreciate, Olivia observed a scene that intrigued her. Benjamin, Ethan's grandfather, was sitting alone on the porch of his modest home, staring intently at an old photograph. Driven by a curiosity she couldn't contain, Olivia approached him quietly. The old man noticed her presence but didn't move. "They're his parents," Benjamin said without taking his eyes off the photo. Emily and Antonio. Olivia felt the weight of those words. It was the first time anyone had mentioned Ethan's parents. "What happened to them?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Benjamin sighed deeply. "A car accident on the road when he was just 5 years old. They were coming back from a party in the neighboring town. Since then, it's just been the two of us." Olivia felt her heart tighten. Suddenly, Ethan's toughness, his dedication to work, it all started to make more sense. "That's why he's so—" she began, but couldn't finish. "Closed off?" Benjamin completed. "Yes. Losing his parents so young changed him. He learned to protect himself, keeping everyone at a safe distance." The sun was beginning to set when Olivia finally returned to her tasks, her mind filled with new thoughts. She found Ethan in the stable, brushing a horse with methodical and precise movements. "You ride much better now," he commented without looking at her. "You've learned quickly." "I had a good teacher," Olivia replied, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. For a moment, the silence between them seemed heavy with unspoken words. Olivia wanted to say that she understood him a little better now, that she was sorry for his loss, but something held her back. Perhaps it was the fear of breaking the fragile balance that was beginning to form between them. Sophia appeared suddenly, interrupting the moment. "Olivia, your father wants to speak with you in the main house," she informed her, her professional tone masking a hint of irritation that didn't go unnoticed. As she walked away, Olivia glanced back one last time. Ethan had turned his attention back to the horse, but something about his posture seemed different, more vulnerable perhaps. That night, lying in her bed, Olivia reflected on how her perception of the ranch and its inhabitants had changed in just 1 week. What had once seemed like an unfair punishment was beginning to reveal itself as a journey of discovery, not just about rural work, but about the people, their stories, and, most importantly, about herself. Outside, the chirping of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle created a nighttime symphony that, surprisingly, she no longer found irritating. On the contrary, there was something comforting about that natural melody, so different from the honks and sirens of the city. In his simple home, Ethan also remained awake, his thoughts drifting to the city girl who was slowly beginning to reveal a side of herself he hadn't expected to discover. The photo of his parents, always present on his nightstand, seemed to watch him with a new meaning that night. The preparations for the harvest festival were bustling throughout Hope Valley Ranch. The main courtyard was being decorated with colorful banners, and the aroma of traditional dishes that Margaret Brown and her helpers were preparing filled every corner of the property. Olivia, to her own surprise, found herself genuinely excited about the event. "You need an appropriate outfit," said Margaret as she prepared her famous corn cakes. "The harvest festival isn't the place for designer dresses, girl." Olivia looked at her suitcases, filled with clothes unsuitable for the occasion. After 2 weeks on the ranch, she had already learned that her idea of casual was completely different from rural reality. "And where am I supposed to find an appropriate outfit around here?" "Leave it to me," replied the cook with a knowing smile. "My niece Anna is about your size. She always keeps some nice pieces for special occasions." Meanwhile, in the fields, Ethan was coordinating the final tasks before the festival. The harvest had been especially good that year, and even his usually serious expression showed satisfaction. Liam, working beside him, didn't miss the chance to tease him. "So are you going to muster the courage to ask the princess to dance tomorrow?" he asked with a mischievous grin. Ethan pretended not to hear, focusing on adjusting the fence of the new pasture, but his thoughts betrayed him, leading him to imagine Olivia in traditional attire, her hair loose in the wind during the dance. Sophia supervised everything with her usual perfectionism, but something about her behavior was different. Her glances at Ethan grew more intense, and her irritation with Olivia became more evident. "We need to check the drink stock for tomorrow," she said, approaching Ethan. "Can you help me after work?" "I can help too," offered Olivia, who was passing by carrying bales of straw for the decorations. Her once delicate hands now bore calluses like medals of her adaptation to rural life. Sophia shot her an icy look. "That won't be necessary. You probably have other priorities." The sharp tone didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Olivia, who in the first weeks would have responded in kind, simply shrugged and continued her work. Her transformation was notable not just physically, but especially in her behavior. In the afternoon, while helping set up the tables for the festival, Olivia was surprised by the arrival of her father. William observed his daughter for a few moments, noticing the subtle changes in her posture, in the way she moved more confidently through the rural environment. "Ah, you've changed," he commented with a mix of pride and surprise. "It's the hard work," she replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "It does wonders for your posture." William smiled, recognizing in his daughter's words a humor he hadn't seen in a long time. "And what do you think of the experience so far?" Olivia paused for a moment, considering the question. "It's different from what I imagined," she finally replied. "The people here have their own way of seeing life. At first I thought it was all very simple, even primitive, but there's a wisdom in that simplicity that I've never found in the city." Her father nodded, satisfied. "And Ethan? How has it been working with him?" The mention of the ranch hand's name made Olivia blush slightly, something that didn't go unnoticed by William. "He's a good teacher," she replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Demanding but patient." Across the yard, Benjamin watched the interaction between father and daughter with interest. The old man had lived long enough to recognize the subtle signs of a transformation in progress. That night after dinner, Olivia found a package on her bed. Inside was a traditional festival dress with lace details and colorful ribbons. A note from Margaret Brown accompanied the outfit. "For you to shine tomorrow, dear." Touched by the gesture, Olivia tried on the dress. The mirror revealed a very different image from the socialite who had arrived at the ranch weeks ago. Her face, slightly tanned from working outdoors, had a natural glow that no expensive makeup could ever achieve. On the porch of the main house, Sophia was organizing the day's final spreadsheets when she saw Ethan pass by on his horse. Her heart raced, as it always did in his presence. "Are you going to the festival tomorrow?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "It's like every year," he replied without much enthusiasm. "Maybe we could dance a song," she suggested, her voice filled with hope. Ethan merely nodded vaguely before continuing on his way, leaving Sophia with her thoughts and a growing sense of unease. As the night deepened, the ranch gradually quieted except for the sounds of nature. Olivia, still wearing Margaret's gift, walked to the window of her room. The full moon illuminated the yard where, the next day, the festival would take place. In his simple home, Ethan also gazed at the night, an old photograph in his hands. In it, his parents smiled at a harvest festival many years ago. His father wore a plaid shirt, and his mother a dress very similar to the one Anna had lent to Olivia. Fate sometimes had a peculiar sense of humor, he thought, putting the photo back in his drawer. Tomorrow would be a special day, and something in the air suggested that more than just a simple harvest festival was about to happen at Hope Valley Ranch. The day of the festival dawned with a different energy at Hope Valley Ranch. The sky was exceptionally blue, and a gentle breeze carried the aroma of the treats that had been bubbling in Margaret's pots since dawn. Olivia woke up earlier than usual, her heart pounding with an anticipation she couldn't explain. The borrowed dress was carefully laid out over a chair, its colorful ribbons dancing in the breeze that drifted through the window. Even though she had a few tasks to complete before the party, Olivia found herself repeatedly glancing at the dress, imagining what the celebration would be like. "Today the work is lighter," Liam explained during breakfast. "It's tradition. We only do the essentials so everyone can prepare for the party." The flow of visitors was already beginning to pick up. Wagons and trucks arrived carrying families from neighboring ranches, all bringing some contribution to the party. Homemade sweets, traditional treats, artisanal drinks. The hospitality of the countryside was on display in its purest form. Sophia coordinated the preparations with her usual efficiency, but there was a noticeable tension in her movements. Her eyes followed Ethan whenever he passed by, carrying bales of hay or helping set up the final structures for the party. "Olivia, I need you to help with the table decorations," Sophia ordered, her tone sharper than necessary. "And try not to ruin anything." "Leave it to me," Olivia replied, surprising everyone with her calmness. The old Olivia would have snapped back, But weeks of hard work had taught her more than just rural tasks. They had given her a new perspective on humility and respect. By the afternoon, as the sun began its descent on the horizon, the transformation of the yard was complete. Colorful streamers danced in the wind, long tables covered with embroidered tablecloths awaited the guests, and a small stage had been set up for the local musicians. Olivia retreated to get ready, her heart beating faster with each passing minute. For the first time in a long while, she didn't miss her expensive makeup or imported beauty products. She opted for a simple look, leaving her hair loose and natural, with just a wildflower tucked behind her ear. When she finally put on the borrowed dress, the image in the mirror surprised her. The dress, with its simple ruffles and colorful ribbons, seemed to have been made for her. Her beauty now had something authentic about it, something no sophisticated production had ever captured before. Outside, the music had already started. The sound of the accordion blended with the guitar and percussion, creating a joyful and contagious melody. The first couples began to dance, twirling around the yard illuminated by colorful lanterns. Ethan, wearing a crisp shirt and neatly pressed pants, leaned against one of the barn posts watching the scene. His gaze wandered over the crowd, seemingly disinterested, but his heart skipped a beat when Olivia appeared on the porch of the main house. "Our princess looks different today," Liam commented, approaching with 2 cups of spiced cider. "She almost looks like a true country girl." Before Ethan could respond, Sophia appeared, wearing a red dress that had clearly been chosen to draw attention. "How about a dance?" she asked Ethan directly, ignoring Liam's presence. The moment was interrupted by Benjamin, who approached leaning on his cane. "My grandson," he said with a special gleam in his eye, "your mother loved this song. Why? Don't you ask the young lady to dance?" Everyone knew he wasn't referring to Sophia. Ethan hesitated for a moment, his eyes meeting Olivia's as she stepped into the yard. There was something magnetic about that instant, as if the entire party had fallen silent around them. Sophia noticed the exchanged glances, and her face hardened. "I'll check if everything is in order in the kitchen," she said curtly, walking away with stiff steps. Olivia, on the other hand, felt strangely nervous. The lights, the music, the festive atmosphere, everything seemed more intense. Some people greeted her, noticing her transformation, but her eyes kept returning to Ethan's figure. The night was just beginning, and the air carried that special electricity that precedes important moments. The stars shone brightly in the country sky, as if they too wanted to join the celebration. Margaret, observing everything from her privileged spot near the food tables, smiled contentedly. Her hands, calloused from years of work, adjusted the flower arrangement on the embroidered tablecloth, while her wise eyes followed the unfolding events. "Ah, my dear," she murmured to herself, "when love decides to show up, no fence can hold it back." The Harvest Festival was officially beginning, and with it perhaps a new chapter in the history of Hope Valley Ranch. The music shifted to a slower rhythm, an old country tune that spoke of rural love. Olivia watched the couples dancing, feeling strangely part of a world that once seemed so distant to her. The aroma of traditional treats mixed with the scent of wildflowers decorating the tables, creating a unique atmosphere. It was at that moment that Ethan finally mustered his courage. He crossed the courtyard with determined steps, ignoring the curious glances of the guests. He stopped in front of Olivia, his heart beating faster than usual. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Olivia felt her face flush. "I don't know how to dance to this kind of music," she admitted, somewhat embarrassed. "I'll teach you," he replied, extending his hand. The moment their hands touched seemed to carry a special energy. Ethan led her to the center of the courtyard, where other couples were dancing. Gently, he placed one hand on her waist, while holding the other up high. "Just follow my steps," he instructed, beginning to move to the rhythm of the music. At first, Olivia was tense, worried about making a mistake, but gradually, guided by Ethan's confidence, she began to relax. Their bodies found a natural synchrony, as if they had danced together all their lives. On the other side of the courtyard, Sophia watched the scene with a mix of anger and sadness. Her cup of mulled wine remained untouched in her hands, while her eyes couldn't look away from the couple. "Some things we can't control, my dear," said Margaret, who noticed her discomfort. The heart has its own paths. Benjamin, sitting in his usual chair, watched his grandson with a nostalgic smile. Just like his parents, he murmured to himself, recalling old harvest festivals. The music continued, and Olivia was surprised by how easily she followed Ethan's steps. Their eyes met several times during the dance, each time harder to look away. "You dance well for someone who's never tried," he commented, breaking the silence. "I have a good teacher," she replied, repeating the words she had used about her riding lessons. Liam Johnson, dancing nearby with his girlfriend, couldn't help but smile as he watched his usually serious friend showing such ease on the dance floor. When the music ended, Olivia Carter and Ethan Thompson stood still for a moment, as if they didn't want to break the spell of that instant. It was William Carter, Olivia's father, who inadvertently interrupted the moment by calling his daughter to meet some important guests. "Thank you for the dance," said Olivia, reluctant to walk away. Ethan simply nodded, his eyes following her as she moved away. Something had changed during that dance. An invisible barrier had been broken. The party continued lively. Children ran between the adults, playing tag. The elders told old stories of the region, their laughter mingling with the music. The starry country sky seemed brighter than ever. Sophia Martinez, unable to keep watching the growing closeness between Olivia and Ethan, retreated to her office in the main house. Her thoughts were a storm of conflicting emotions. On her desk, an old photo showed her and Ethan as younger people, working together on the ranch. How much time had she wasted waiting for something that might never have been real? Back at the party, Olivia found herself surrounded by people who wanted to get to know her better. Many commented on how well she had adapted to life on the ranch and how different she seemed from the young woman who had arrived just a few weeks earlier. "You've brought a new light to his eyes," remarked an elderly lady, a distant cousin of Benjamin Thompson. "It's been a long time since I've seen the boy smile like that." Olivia felt her heart race at the comment. Her eyes searched for Ethan in the crowd, finding him talking to some ranch hands near the bonfire that had been lit. The night wore on, but no one seemed willing to leave. The harvest festival was a special moment, a celebration not only of the fruits of the land, but also of the bonds that united the community. Margaret Brown began serving coffee with cornbread, a tradition to chase away sleep, as she put it. The sweet aroma drew people back to the tables. Olivia took advantage of the moment to step away from the hustle and bustle. She walked to the porch of the main house, where the music reached her more softly. The full moon bathed everything in its silvery light, giving the landscape an almost magical air. She didn't notice when Ethan approached, also seeking a moment of quiet. "The night is beautiful," he commented, stopping beside her. "Yes," Olivia replied, feeling her heart race again. "I had never noticed how different the stars are here in the countryside." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if words were unnecessary at that moment. The music in the background, the glow of the moon, the scent of night flowers, everything seemed to conspire to create a perfect moment. The harvest festival would continue late into the night, but for Olivia and Ethan, the world seemed to have narrowed down to that porch, to that moment, as if destiny had finally found its way. The morning after the festival dawned with a different atmosphere at Hope Valley Ranch. The dew covered the grass like tiny diamonds, and a peculiar silence hung in the air, the kind of silence that follows significant moments. Olivia woke up early, defying the expectations of those who thought everyone would sleep in after the party. Her thoughts still danced with memories of the previous night, the touch of Ethan's hands during the dance, the moment on the balcony, the exchanged glances under the moonlight. Dressed in simple work clothes, which now felt as natural as her old designer outfits, she went downstairs to help with the post-party cleanup. To her surprise, she found Sophia already working, her tense face showing that she hadn't slept well either. "We need to talk," Sophia said, her tone more serious than usual. "Meet me in the office in 10 minutes. Olivia felt a chill in her stomach. Something in Sophia's tone suggested this wouldn't be a pleasant conversation. Still, she nodded and continued her tasks, helping Margaret organize the kitchen. "Be careful, girl," whispered the old cook, who seemed to have a sixth sense for tense situations. "Not all snakes make noise before they strike." In the office, Sophia was standing by the window, watching the activity in the yard where, the night before, so much had changed. When Olivia entered, she didn't turn around immediately. "You have no idea what you're doing," Sophia began, her voice controlled but laden with emotion. "This ranch, these people, there are stories you don't know." "What stories?" Olivia asked, standing firm despite her discomfort. Sophia finally turned around, her green eyes gleaming with a disturbing intensity. "Ethan isn't what you think. There are secrets in his past, things that could completely change your opinion of him." "What kind of secrets, sir?" Olivia felt her heart race. "Ask him about the fire in the south barn 5 years ago," Sophia replied, an enigmatic smile on her lips. "Ask him why his grandfather was never the same after that day." Before Olivia could ask more, they were interrupted by William, who entered the office with some documents in hand. "Sophia, I need you to review these contracts," he said, stopping as he noticed the tension in the room. "Is everything okay here?" "Perfectly," Sophia replied, reassuming her professional demeanor. "Just discussing some work details." Olivia left the office with a troubled mind. Sophia's words echoed in her thoughts, mingling with the memories of the previous night. Outside, the sun was already high, and the day's work continued as usual. Ethan was in the corral, organizing the animals with his usual efficiency. Seeing him, Olivia felt her heart tighten. How could this man, who had shown himself to be so kind and protective, be hiding such dark secrets? "We need to talk," she said, approaching him with determination. Ethan looked up, surprised by the seriousness in her voice. For a moment, Olivia thought she saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. "About what?" he asked, dropping the rope he was holding. "About the fire in the south barn," replied Olivia, closely watching his reaction. "About what happened 5 years ago." Ethan's face visibly paled. His entire body seemed to tense, as if an electric current had passed through him. "Who told you about that?" His voice came out harsher than usual. "Does it matter?" Olivia shot back. "What happened that day, Ethan?" The silence that followed was heavy as lead. In the distance, the sounds of work on the ranch continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the corral. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the nearby trees, as if nature itself awaited the answer. "Some stories," Ethan finally said, his voice laden with ancient pain, "are too hard to tell." "I deserve to know the truth," Olivia insisted, her voice softening slightly. After last night, nothing has changed," he cut in, his expression hardening. "Some things are better left in the past." With those words, Ethan walked away, leaving Olivia alone with her doubts and an increasingly confused heart. What had really happened in that barn? Why had Sophia chosen that exact moment to reveal this information? Liam, who had been watching the scene from afar, shook his head with concern. He knew that secrets, like poorly planted seeds, had the power to destroy even the most promising harvests. The day continued its course at Hope Valley Ranch, but something had changed. The shadows of the past, long dormant, were beginning to awaken, threatening to bring long-buried truths to light. The days that followed at Hope Valley Ranch were marked by a palpable tension. Olivia, torn between curiosity and fear, watched. Ethan, with new eyes, searching in every gesture, in every unspoken word, for clues about the mystery that now separated them. Ethan, for his part, had closed himself off even more. His work routine remained impeccable, but it was as if an invisible wall surrounded him, keeping everyone, especially Olivia, at a safe distance. On a particularly hot afternoon, as Olivia helped with the milking, Liam finally decided to address the subject everyone was avoiding. "What happened between you and Ethan?" he asked, feigning casualness as he adjusted the milking equipment. "You two barely look at each other since the party." Olivia hesitated, unsure how much she should reveal. "Liam, what do you know about the fire in the south barn?" The ranch hand's face visibly hardened. "Who told you about that?" "So it's true that something happened," Olivia pressed, her heart racing. "Please, Liam, I need to understand." Liam sighed deeply, looking around to make sure they were alone. "It's not my story to tell, Olivia. But I can tell you one thing. Not everything is as it seems. Sometimes heroes are painted as villains by those who don't know the whole truth." His words, though cryptic, planted a seed of doubt in Olivia's mind. Could it be that there was more to this story than Sophia had hinted at? That night, unable to sleep, Olivia decided to investigate on her own. She waited until everyone had retired and, with her heart racing, made her way to the area where the south barn once stood. The moonlight illuminated the now empty lot, overgrown, with tall weeds. There were no visible traces of the fire, but Olivia could feel the weight of history in the air. As she walked through the area, her foot stumbled upon something metallic, partially buried. Kneeling down, she unearthed an object, an old medal, blackened by time and fire. On it, the words were still clear: "For bravery and courage." "What are you doing here?" Ethan's voice startled her. He was standing a few meters away, his expression a mix of surprise and apprehension. "I needed to understand," Olivia replied, holding up the medal. "Ethan, what really happened here?" For a long moment, Ethan remained silent, his gaze fixed on the medal. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "That night, the barn caught fire. We don't know how it started, but within minutes it was out of control. There were animals trapped inside, and my grandfather, he went in to try to save them." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "And you?" "I went in after him," Ethan continued, his eyes distant with memories. "I managed to get my grandfather and some of the animals out, but the roof collapsed before we could save them all. The smoke, the heat, it was horrible." "So you're a hero," Olivia said, finally understanding. "Why hide it?" Ethan shook, his head a shadow of pain crossing his face. "My grandfather never forgave himself for not being able to save all the animals. The guilt consumed him, changed him. And I blame myself for not being faster, for not stopping him from risking his life." The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together in Olivia's mind, the sadness in Benjamin's eyes, the weight Ethan carried, Sophia's insinuations. "Why did Sophia make me believe you had done something terrible?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "Sophia was there that night," Ethan replied, his gaze meeting Olivia's. "She saw everything, but something changed in her after that. I think she never accepted that I risked my life that way." The silence that followed was filled only by the soft sound of the wind in the trees and the occasional distant lowing of cattle. Olivia took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Ethan, it's not your fault. You saved your grandfather. You risked your own life. That's something to be proud of, not to hide." Slowly, as if fearing to break the moment, Olivia reached out, offering the medal to Ethan. Their fingers touched, and in that instant something shifted between them. It was as if the last barriers had finally fallen. "Thank you," murmured Ethan, his voice hoarse with emotion, "for understanding, for being here." On the horizon, the first rays of sunlight began to paint the sky, heralding a new day. And there, among the ashes of the past and the promise of a future, Olivia and Ethan found each other again. But while the new day brought hope for some, for others, it brought the threat of long-buried truths coming to light. In the main house, Sophia watched the distant scene through the window, her green eyes gleaming with a mix of jealousy and determination. The game was far from over, and she still had cards to play. The days following the revelation in the old barn brought a new dynamic to Hope Valley Ranch. Olivia and Ethan had grown even closer, sharing not only moments of work, but also deep conversations during breaks and meaningful glances. This change did not go unnoticed by the other inhabitants of the ranch. Margaret smiled discreetly every time she saw them together, while Liam never missed an opportunity to make light-hearted comments about the new couple. Benjamin, Ethan's grandfather, watched everything with a mix of joy and concern, as if he knew the current calm was just the prelude to a storm. Sophia, on the other hand, grew more taciturn and irritable by the day. Her eyes, once bright with determination, now carried a shadow of bitterness. She spent hours locked in the office, immersed in papers and spreadsheets, avoiding contact. with Olivia and Ethan as much as possible. On a particularly hot afternoon, as Olivia helped with the corn harvest, William, her father, approached with a serious expression. "Daughter, we need to talk," he said, indicating a spot in the shade of a large tree. Olivia followed him, feeling a chill in her stomach. Something in her father's tone worried her. "What is it, Dad?" she asked as soon as they sat down. William took a deep breath before beginning. "Olivia, you know I came to the ranch not just to bring you here, but also to resolve some financial problems." Olivia nodded, vaguely remembering hearing something about business difficulties. "The situation is more serious than we thought," he continued. "The ranch is at risk. We have a considerable debt and, well, I've received a purchase offer." "Purchase?" Olivia repeated, incredulous. "But Dad, this ranch has been in our family for generations. We can't just sell it." William ran his hand through his graying hair, a gesture Olivia recognized as a sign of stress. "I know, dear, but it might be our only option to avoid total bankruptcy." "Who made the offer?" asked Olivia, a knot forming in her throat. "It's a major agribusiness company," replied William. "They want to turn Hope Valley Ranch into a model farm with cutting-edge technology." Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The thought of losing the ranch, of seeing the place that had become so special to her transformed into an industrial operation, was devastating. "There must be another way," she insisted. "We can't just give up." William smiled sadly. "I admire your optimism, daughter, but the reality is harsh. We only have a month to raise the money needed to pay off the debt, or we'll have to accept the offer." As father and daughter spoke, they didn't notice they were being watched. Sophia, hidden behind a nearby tractor, listened to every word with growing interest. Her eyes gleamed with a mix of triumph and calculation. On the other side of the field, Ethan worked tirelessly, unaware of the conversation that would change everyone's fate. He had noticed William and Olivia approaching, but respected their privacy. His heart, however, sensed that something important was happening. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, a palpable tension hung over Hope Valley Ranch. The news of the possible sale spread quickly like wildfire. That evening, during dinner at the workers' house, the topic dominated all conversations. Liam, always the most talkative, couldn't hide his concern. "If they sell the ranch, where will we go?" he asked, absent-mindedly pushing food around his plate. "This land is all we've ever known." Ethan remained silent, his mind racing furiously in search of a solution. The thought of losing the ranch, the place where he grew up and which held all his memories, was unbearable. In the main house, Olivia barely touched her food. Her thoughts were divided between concern for the ranch's future and the anguish of how it would affect her newly discovered connection with Ethan. Sophia, on the other hand, dined alone in her office, an enigmatic smile on her lips as she typed furiously on her laptop. Fate had given her an unexpected opportunity, and she was determined to make the most of it. As the night deepened, dark clouds began to form on the horizon, heralding a storm. It was as if the sky itself reflected the turmoil approaching Hope Valley Ranch. The clock in the main house's tower struck midnight when the first distant thunder rumbled. The storm was approaching, both literally and metaphorically, and no one on the ranch was prepared for what it would bring with it. The next morning dawned grey and damp, the air charged with the electricity of the storm that had passed during the night. Hope Valley Ranch seemed wrapped in a cloak of apprehension, the news of the possible sale weighing on everyone like a dark cloud. Olivia woke up early, determined to find a solution to save the ranch. She dressed quickly and headed to the office, hoping to find some clue in the accounting books that could help. To her surprise, she found Sophia already there, bent over a stack of documents. "Good morning, Olivia," said Sophia, her tone surprisingly friendly. "I imagine you're here for the same reasons as I am." Olivia nodded cautiously. "We need to find a way to save the ranch." Sophia smiled, a strange glint in her eyes. "Actually, I think I have a solution. Come, let me show you something." With growing curiosity, Olivia followed Sophia to an old file cabinet. The administrator pulled out a dusty folder and opened it on the table. "These are old ranch documents," Sophia explained. And here, she pointed to a yellowed map, is the key to our salvation. The map showed an area of the ranch that Olivia didn't recognize, marked with a red X and the inscription Gold Vein 1902. A gold vein? Asked Olivia, incredulous. But this would change everything. Sophia nodded, her smile widening. Exactly. With this, we could not only save the ranch but turn it into a much more profitable venture. As the two women discussed the implications of the discovery, they didn't notice the figure listening intently outside the window. Liam, who had come to deliver some reports, heard enough to leave him deeply unsettled. Running as fast as he could, Liam went to find Ethan, who was working in the stable. "Ethan," he called, breathless, "you won't believe what I just overheard." Quickly, Liam recounted the conversation between Olivia and Sophia. As he spoke, Ethan's face grew darker and darker. "A gold vein," murmured Ethan, his mind racing furiously. "That doesn't make sense. My grandfather knows every inch of this land. If there were gold here, he would know." "What are we going to do?" asked Liam Johnson anxiously. Ethan Thompson remained silent for a moment, pondering. "We need to investigate this further. Something isn't right about this story." Meanwhile, in the main house, William Carter received an unexpected visitor. A man in a suit representing the company interested in buying the ranch waited in the living room. "Mr. Carter," the man began, his voice soft but firm, "we've come to make a final offer. Double the initial amount, but we need an answer by the end of the week." William felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. It's a generous offer, but this ranch is more than just a business to us. The man smiled, understanding. "I understand your emotional attachment, Mr. Carter, but think about the future. Our company can bring progress, jobs, technology. Isn't that what you want for your daughter?" The man's words echoed in William's mind, mingling with his own doubts and concerns. Out in the fields, Ethan and Liam had decided to investigate the area marked on the map. Armed with shovels and determination, they began digging at the indicated spot. Hours passed, and the sun was already high in the sky when Ethan's shovel hit something solid. With their hearts racing, they dug further, revealing an old metal box. "What is this?" asked Liam eagerly. Ethan carefully opened the box. Inside, they found not gold, but old documents and a letter yellowed with time. With trembling hands, Ethan unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dear Benjamin, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered the secret I swore to take to my grave. There is no gold in this land, my son. The true wealth of Hope Valley lies in the sweat and love of those who cultivate it. The map of the gold vein was my invention, created many years ago to protect our land from greedy speculators. Forgive me for this deception, but it was the only way I found to ensure the ranch remained in our hands. Take good care of this land, Benjamin. It is our true inheritance. With love, your father, Antonio Thompson." Ethan felt tears in his eyes as he finished reading. The revelation was both shocking and liberating. "We need to show this to your grandfather and Mr. William," said Liam, his voice filled with urgency. Meanwhile, in the main house, Olivia Carter confronted Sophia Martinez about the authenticity of the map. "How did you find this so conveniently?" questioned Olivia, her suspicion growing. Sophia, cornered, dropped her mask of friendliness. "You don't understand, do you? This ranch is going bankrupt. The map, real or not, is our only chance to save everything. Even if it means deceiving everyone," Olivia shot back, horrified. At that moment, Ethan burst through the door, followed by Liam. Their eyes met Olivia's, and in that instant, they both knew they were on the same side. "We have something everyone needs to see," said Ethan, holding up his great-grandfather's letter. The fate of Hope Valley Ranch was about to be decided, and the revelations of that day would forever change the course of their lives. The office in the main house became the epicenter of an emotional storm, as everyone involved gathered to discuss the recent discoveries. William, Olivia, Ethan, Sophia, Liam, and old Benjamin were present, each carrying the weight of their own expectations and secrets. Ethan, his voice choked with emotion, read aloud his great-grandfather's letter. The words echoed through the room, revealing a long-buried truth and dismantling the hopes based on the fake gold map. "So there's no gold," murmured William, running, her hand over his tired face. "We're back to square one." Sophia, cornered, tried to defend herself. "I just wanted to save the ranch. I thought if we believed in the gold, we could convince investors to give us more time." "By lying?" Olivia retorted, outraged. "By building false hopes?" Benjamin, who had remained silent until then, slowly rose from his chair. His eyes, though aged, shone with wisdom accumulated over decades. "My father," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, "always said that the true wealth of this land wasn't in what we could extract from it, but in what we could create together." All eyes turned to the patriarch of the Thompson family. "For years I carried the weight of the barn fire, the guilt of not saving all the animals," Benjamin continued. "But today I understand that the true legacy my father wanted me to preserve wasn't the structures or the material possessions, but the spirit of this ranch." Ethan stepped closer to his grandfather, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Olivia, moved by an impulse, joined them, forming a trio united by adversity and the affection that had grown between them. William watched the scene, feeling the weight of the decision he needed to make. "But how will we save the ranch without the money from the sale or the gold?" It was then that Liam, who had been quiet until then, stepped forward. "What if we diversified? Have you thought about rural tourism?" Everyone turned to him, surprised. "Think about it," Liam continued, excited. "We have a beautiful ranch with a rich history. People from the city would pay to spend a few days here, learning about country life and participating in the activities." Olivia felt a spark of hope ignite. He's right. We could offer authentic experiences, cooking workshops with Margaret Brown, horseback riding. And with Olivia's expertise in marketing and social media, we could reach a wide audience, added Ethan, a smile beginning to form on his lips. William seemed to seriously consider the idea. "It's risky, but it could work." Sophia, seeing the tide turn against her, tried one last move. "But what about the investors, the debt? We don't have time to implement all of this." It was then that Benjamin did something unexpected. He walked over to an old painting on the wall and removed it, revealing a built-in safe. With trembling hands, he turned the combination dial and opened the metal door. "My father didn't leave gold," he said, pulling out a folder of documents, "but he left something equally valuable, bonds and investments saved for a moment of extreme need. I believe that moment has come." The revelation hit the room like a bombshell. With these resources combined with the diversification plan, Hope Valley Ranch had a real chance of survival. "Why did you never mention this before?" asked Ethan, astonished. Benjamin smiled sadly. "Because I learned the hard way that money isn't everything. I wanted to make sure you all understood the true value of this land before revealing it." The next few hours were filled with intense discussion and planning. Olivia and Ethan worked, side by side, their different experiences complementing each other perfectly. Liam contributed creative ideas, while William used his contacts to start structuring the new business. Sophia, realizing she had lost her position of trust, offered her resignation, which William accepted with a mix of disappointment and relief. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the group stepped out onto the porch of the main house. Hope Valley Ranch stretched out before them, beautiful and promising. "You know," said Olivia, her hand finding Ethan's, "when I first arrived here, I thought I was being punished. Now I understand it was the greatest gift I could have received." Ethan pulled her close, his eyes reflecting the love that had blossomed between them. "And you were the gift this ranch needed to renew itself." Benjamin watched the couple with a smile on his lips. "Your great-grandfather would be proud," he murmured. "The true wealth of Hope Valley has always been the love and dedication of its people." As the group contemplated the future with renewed hope, a gentle breeze swept through the fields, carrying with it the promise of better days. Hope Valley Ranch was about to begin a new chapter in its history, a chapter of rebirth, unity, and love. The weeks following the revelation of Benjamin's safe were filled with intense activity at Hope Valley Ranch. The plan to transform the property into a rural tourism destination was beginning to take shape, bringing with it a wave of renewal and hope. Olivia, using her digital marketing skills, created an attractive website and began developing strategies to attract visitors. Her social media posts, showcasing the natural beauty of the ranch and the authenticity of country life, quickly gained traction. Ethan, on the other hand, led the adaptation of the infrastructure. Old barns were transformed into rustic, yet comfortable accommodations, and new trails for hiking and horseback riding were marked throughout the property. On a sunny morning, while overseeing the renovation of an old barn, Olivia and Ethan took a moment to reflect on the changes. "It's amazing how much has changed in such a short time," Olivia commented, watching the workers install large glass windows in what would become a space for workshops and events. Ethan nodded, a gentle smile on his lips. "Changed for the better. This ranch always had potential. We just needed to see it through different eyes." Olivia turned to him, her eyes shining with emotion. "Not just the ranch, Ethan. I've changed too. You helped me see the world differently." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her tenderly. "We changed together, Olivia. You brought a new energy to this place, to all of us." The moment was interrupted by Liam, who came running as excited as a child. "You need to see this. The first group of visitors has arrived." The trio hurried toward the ranch entrance, where a small bus had just parked. About 15 people stepped out, a mix of young couples, families with children, and some retirees, all looking around with curiosity and anticipation. Margaret was already there, welcoming the visitors with her characteristic hospitality, offering fresh coffee and cheese bread straight from the oven. "Welcome to Hope Valley Ranch," Olivia announced, feeling a surge of pride as she saw the sparkle in the visitors' eyes. "We're happy to share a bit of our life with you." Activities for the group began immediately. Ethan led a tour of the Gee property, explaining the ranch's history and the sustainable farming methods they were implementing. The children were especially delighted by the chance to feed the animals in the small zoo they had set up. In the afternoon, Margaret conducted a workshop on traditional cooking, teaching the visitors how to make homemade sweets and regional treats. The delicious aroma wafting from the kitchen even attracted the busiest workers. Meanwhile, Benjamin found his place as a storyteller. Sitting on the porch of the main house, he enchanted the visitors with local legends and memories of times past. His face, once marked by guilt and sadness, now radiated a serene joy as he watched the ranch come to life again. As night fell, a bonfire was lit in the center of the yard. Local musicians, hired for the occasion, began to play, filling the air with traditional melodies. Soon, visitors and ranch residents were dancing together, the differences between city and country dissolving in the joy of the moment. Olivia and Ethan watched the scene, arms intertwined, their hearts overflowing with happiness and fulfillment. "You know," said Ethan, his voice soft in Olivia's ear, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you for a while." Olivia turned to him, noticing a special sparkle in his eyes. "What is it?" Ethan took a deep breath, gathering courage. "Olivia, these past few months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light to this ranch and to my heart. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop for a moment. Olivia felt tears of happiness forming in her eyes. "Yes," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The kiss that followed was witnessed by the glow of the bonfire and the stars beginning to dot the night sky. Gradually, the guests noticed what was happening, and a wave of applause and congratulations filled the air. William, watching from a distance, felt his heart swell with pride and gratitude. His daughter, whom he once feared was lost to the superficiality of city life, had found her true place and her true love. Benjamin approached the couple, his eyes glistening with tears of joy. "May the blessing this land has given us for generations always be with you," he said, embracing them. That night, under the starry country sky, surrounded by friends, family, and visitors who had quickly become part of this large family, Olivia and Ethan sealed their commitment. It was more than a promise of marriage. It was a commitment to the land, to tradition, and to a future they would build together. Hope Valley Ranch, once threatened by modernity and financial difficulties, now pulsed with new life. It was a testament to the power of love, perseverance, and the ability to reinvent oneself. And so, as the music played and people danced, a new story began to be written, a story of hope, renewal, and eternal love. The months following Olivia and Ethan's engagement were filled with intense activity at Hope Valley Ranch. The success of the rural tourism venture exceeded all expectations, with bookings coming from all over the country and even abroad. The ranch had become a refuge for those seeking an authentic connection with nature and rural traditions. Alongside the challenges of the new business, wedding preparations took shape. Olivia and Ethan had decided to hold the ceremony at the ranch itself, a symbol of the union between their lives and the land they so dearly loved. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, while visitors participated in a milking lesson with Liam, Olivia found a moment of peace to chat with Margaret in the kitchen of the main house. "Sometimes I still wonder if all of this is real," Olivia confessed, helping to sort ingredients for another batch of treats. "It feels like just yesterday I arrived here, angry and lost." Margaret smiled, her wisdom reflected in her kind eyes. "Life has a way of doing that, my dear. Sometimes what seems like a punishment turns out to be the greatest blessing." Olivia nodded, emotional. "Margaret, I wanted to ask you something special. Would you accept being my matron of honor?" The old cook stopped what she was doing, her eyes filling with tears. "Me? But miss, isn't this a task for important people?" "You are one of the most important people in my life now," replied Olivia, hugging her. "You were the one who welcomed me from the very first day, who taught me so many things." The moment was interrupted by Ethan, who entered the kitchen carrying an old wooden box. "Look what I found in the attic," he exclaimed, placing the box on the table. Upon opening it, he revealed a beautiful bridal veil, yellowed with age but still majestic. "It belonged to your great-grandmother," explained Margaret, recognizing the piece. "They say it brings luck to whoever wears it." Olivia touched the veil delicately, feeling the history and tradition woven into every lace thread. "It's perfect," she murmured. Meanwhile, in the field, William and Benjamin walked side by side, inspecting the new facilities for the visitors. "I never imagined I'd see Hope Valley Ranch like this," commented Benjamin, his gaze sweeping over the land he knew so well. "Full of new life, of possibilities." William nodded, a smile on his lips. "I must confess, Benjamin, when I brought Olivia here, I was afraid I was making a mistake. Now I see it was the best decision I ever made." "Love has a way of doing that," replied the old patriarch. "It transforms everything it touches." As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the visitors gathered in the yard for a traditional viola circle. Liam, revealing a hidden talent, led the group with his strong and melodious voice. Olivia and Ethan joined the circle, their fingers intertwined, hearts beating in unison. The song spoke of love, land, and hope, themes that now resonated deeply in their souls. "Thinking about the big day?" asked Ethan, noticing Olivia's distant gaze. She smiled, squeezing his hand. "Thinking about how unpredictable life is. A bee. Year ago, I couldn't have dreamed of any of this. Now I can't imagine my life any other way." Ethan pulled her closer, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Neither can I. You brought color to a world I thought would always be black and white." As the night deepened, the guests retired, leaving only the family and closest staff around the bonfire. Benjamin, encouraged by the others, began to tell stories of the ranch's early days, of how his ancestors had struggled to turn that raw land into a home. Olivia listened intently, feeling more and more a part of that history, of that family. She looked around at the faces illuminated by the fire: Ethan, her future husband; William, her father, who had risked everything for her; Margaret, who had become a second mother; Liam, the loyal friend, and all the others who were now part of her life. In that moment, under the starry sky of the countryside, with the scent of damp earth and the distant sounds of animals, Olivia felt a deep certainty. No matter what the future held, this was her place. At Hope Valley Ranch, she had found not only love, but also herself. The day before the wedding dawned with a special energy at Hope Valley Ranch. The sky was a deep blue, dotted with white clouds that looked like cotton floating on the horizon. Nature, as if aware of the importance of the moment, seemed more vibrant than ever. Olivia woke up early, her heart beating with a mix of excitement and nervousness. As she opened the window of her room, she was greeted by the sweet scent of the wildflowers that had been planted especially for the occasion. She took a deep breath, letting the familiarity of that smell calm her. In the yard, an unusual bustle took over everyone. Workers and volunteers from the local community moved in sync, setting up the altar, arranging tables and chairs, and hanging lights and rustic decorations that perfectly matched the ranch's atmosphere. Margaret Brown, as always, was in charge of the kitchen, coordinating the preparation of the feast. The delicious aroma of her delicacies was already spreading through the air, promising a feast for the senses. "Olivia, my dear," called Margaret, seeing the bride pass by the kitchen. "Come here, try this little cake. You need to stay strong for the big day." Olivia smiled, accepting the still warm treat. "Margaret, I don't know what we'd do without you." The old cook hugged her affectionately. "Oh dear, you've brought so much joy to this ranch. It's the least I can do." On the other side of the property, Ethan was overseeing the final touches on the restored barn, which would be the venue for the reception. His hands, calloused from work, now handled delicate flower garlands and ribbons. Liam, by his side, didn't miss the chance to tease his friend. "Who would have thought, huh? The tough guy of the ranch all melted because of a city girl." Ethan smiled, unbothered by the teasing. "Life has its surprises, my friend. Sometimes we find what we need in the most unexpected places." Meanwhile, in the main house, William and Benjamin were chatting on the porch, watching the preparations. "You know, William," Benjamin began, his voice filled with emotion, "when I think about everything that's happened, how close we came to losing this ranch, it feels like a miracle." William nodded, placing a hand on his old friend's shoulder. "It wasn't just a miracle, Benjamin. It was the result of love and dedication from all of you. Olivia and I have so much to be grateful for." In the afternoon, with most of the preparations complete, Olivia decided to take a walk around the property. Her feet led her to the old South Barn, the place where everything had started to change. The space, once filled with painful memories, now exuded an aura of rebirth. It was there that Ethan found her, lost in thought. "I thought I'd find you. Here," he said, approaching quietly. Olivia turned around, a smile lighting up her face as she saw her fiancé. "I was just reminiscing." Ethan embraced her from behind, both now gazing at the horizon where the sun was beginning its descent. "A lot has changed since that day, hasn't it?" "Everything has changed," Olivia replied, leaning back into him, "and yet it feels like I've finally found my place in the world." They stayed like that for a moment, in silence, soaking in the peace of the evening and the promise of tomorrow. "I'm nervous," Olivia confessed finally. Ethan turned her to face him, his eyes meeting hers. "Me too, but you know what? I can't imagine a future that isn't by your side, here on this land." His words touched Olivia's heart in a way she had never experienced before. It was a certainty, a silent promise of a shared life of dreams built together. When they returned to the main house, they were greeted by a small surprise. All the staff and close friends had gathered in the courtyard. Holding lanterns, Liam stepped forward, a mischievous smile on his lips. "We know tradition says the bride and groom aren't supposed to see each other before the wedding, but since you two have never been big on following traditions anyway," Margaret continued, "we decided to have a little celebration tonight, to remember the journey you've taken to get here." One by one, guests and staff began sharing memories and wishes for the couple. There were laughs, a few tears, and above all, a palpable sense of love and community. As night fell, the lanterns were lit, creating a path of light across the courtyard. Olivia and Ethan walked hand in hand, each step symbolizing their journey to this moment. At the end of the path, they found William and Benjamin waiting for them. "Tomorrow," William said, his voice choked with emotion, "you'll officially begin your life together, but know that no matter what happens, you'll always have a home here." Benjamin, with tears in his eyes, added, "This ranch has weathered many storms, and now, thanks to you, it has a bright future ahead." Under the starry sky, surrounded by those who had become family, Olivia and Ethan sealed the night with a kiss. It was more than a gesture of love. It was a promise for the future, a commitment not just to each other but to the land and the community that had embraced them. The dawn of the wedding day brought an almost magical aura to Hope Valley Ranch. The sky, still tinged with the pink hues of sunrise, promised a perfect day. The morning dew sparkled on the grass like tiny diamonds, reflecting the light of the rising sun. In the main house, Olivia woke to the sound of birds singing. For a "ow" moment, she lay there absorbing the reality of the day ahead. Her wedding dress, a creation that blended urban elegance with rustic touches, hung gracefully on a hanger in the corner of the room. In the next room, Ethan also woke up, his heart racing with a mix of anxiety and happiness. Through the window, he could see the first guests arriving, their lively voices echoing across the yard. The ranch quickly came to life. Workers and volunteers rushed back and forth, putting the final touches on the decorations. Wildflowers in glass jars adorned the tables, while colorful ribbons danced in the wind, tied between wooden posts. In the kitchen, Margaret Brown commanded her army of helpers with the precision of a general. The aroma of fresh bread, cakes, and traditional treats filled the air, promising an unforgettable feast. "Today is a day of celebration, everyone," she exclaimed, overseeing the preparation of another batch of cheese bread. "Let's show these city folks what a true countryside celebration looks like." Liam Johnson, dressed in his finest clothes, took on the role of an informal master of ceremonies, welcoming the guests and guiding them to their seats. His wide smile and good-humored jokes quickly broke the ice between the city visitors and the locals. As the morning progressed, the anticipation grew. Olivia, surrounded by her city friends who had arrived for the big day, prepared in the main bedroom. The contrast between the understated luxury of her dress and the rustic setting of the room created a poetic image, symbolizing the union of two worlds brought together by love. "I never thought I'd see you get married on a ranch," commented one of her friends, helping her with her hair. Olivia smiled, looking at herself in the mirror. "Neither did I, but now I can't imagine it any other way." Outside, Ethan received some final advice from Benjamin. "Remember, my grandson," said the old patriarch, adjusting Ethan's tie, "marriage is like tending to the land. It requires daily dedication, patience, and a lot of love." Ethan nodded, moved. "Thank you, Grandpa, for everything." Finally, the moment arrived. The guests gathered in the beautiful garden that had been prepared for the ceremony, rows of rustic chairs were arranged facing an arch, decorated with wildflowers and colorful ribbons. In the background, the green hills of the ranch served as the perfect backdrop. The music began to play, a soft melody performed by local musicians, blending guitar, flute, and an accordion. Ethan took his place under the arch, his heart pounding as he waited for the bride. And then she appeared. Olivia walked down the makeshift aisle between the chairs, her arm linked with William's. Her dress, a masterpiece of lace and silk, floated gently in the breeze, but it was her smile, radiant and full of love, that captured everyone's attention. As she reached the altar, Olivia met Ethan's eyes. In that moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, ready to begin a new journey together. The ceremony was simple and moving. Vows were exchanged, promises of eternal love were made. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, a roar of joy echoed across the ranch. Birds took flight from nearby trees, as if they too wanted to celebrate the union. The reception that followed was a true countryside celebration. Tables laden with traditional food, lively music and dancing stretched into the late afternoon and evening. Guests from the city mingled with the locals, sharing stories and laughter. In a quiet moment, Olivia and Ethan stepped away from the festivities, walking hand in hand to a high point on the ranch. From there, they could see the entire property, illuminated by hundreds of lights and lanterns. "It's incredible, isn't it?" said Olivia, leaning against Ethan. "How everything has changed in such a short time." Ethan hugged her, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. It changed for the better, thanks to you. Thanks to us, she corrected, smiling, and to everyone who believed in this ranch. As they watched the scene below, the music, the dancing, the contagious joy, they both felt a deep sense of gratitude. Hope Valley Ranch, which had once been on the brink of collapse, now pulsed with new life. You know what moves me the most? Ethan asked, his voice soft. Thinking that our children will grow up here, learning the value of this land, of this community. Olivia felt her heart fill with love and hope. They'll have the best childhood possible, she agreed, surrounded by nature, stories, and people who will love them. The sound of fireworks brought them back to the present moment. Colorful lights exploded in the sky, illuminating the night and drawing oohs and ahs from the guests. Back at the party, they were greeted with hugs, congratulations, and more toasts. Margaret Brown, with tears in her eyes, blessed them once more. Liam Johnson led a viola circle in their honor. William and Benjamin, side by side, watched everything with paternal pride. As the night wore on, Olivia and Ethan danced under the stars, their bodies moving in perfect sync. They were no longer the city girl and the ranch hand. They were partners, equals, united by love and a shared dream. Hope Valley Ranch, a silent witness to this love, seemed to glow under the moonlight. The trees whispered ancient stories. The wind carried promises of the future. And at the center of it all, a couple danced, celebrating not just their union, but the rebirth of a place, a community, and a way of life. Olivia and Ethan's wedding was not just the happy ending of a love story. It was the beginning of a new era for Hope Valley Ranch, an era of hope, renewal, and endless possibilities. Epilogue: Harvest of Tomorrow. 5 years had passed since Olivia and Ethan's wedding. Hope Valley Ranch, once on the brink of oblivion, was now a model of success and sustainability, attracting visitors from across the country and even abroad. On a sunny spring morning, Olivia walked through the newly planted orchard, her hand resting gently on her belly, which was beginning to show signs of her second pregnancy. By her side, running between the young trees, was Emily, her 4-year-old daughter, a perfect blend of Olivia and Ethan's features. "Mommy, look! The apples are already growing," exclaimed Emily, pointing to the small green fruits beginning to form on the branches. Olivia smiled, carefully crouching down to meet her daughter at eye level. "That's right, sweetheart, and do you know what that means? Soon we'll have a new harvest to celebrate." Not far away, Ethan was overseeing the construction of additional guest accommodations. The success of rural tourism had exceeded all expectations, and demand was only growing. "Ethan," called Liam, approaching with a tablet in hand, "I just got an email. That travel magazine wants to do a special feature on the ranch." Ethan smiled, satisfied. "Great, but let's make sure they understand we're not just a tourist destination. We're a community, a family." In the kitchen of the main house, now transformed into a charming rural cafe, Margaret was teaching a group of enthusiastic visitors the secrets of her famous pastries. "The secret, my dears," she said, kneading the dough with experienced hands, "isn't just in the ingredients, it's in the love we put into every little piece." Benjamin, now over 80 but still full of vitality, was leading a historical tour of the property. His eyes sparkled as he shared stories of his ancestors, weaving them together with the ranch's recent transformations. "Look," he said, pointing to a lush field, "where we once had only pasture, we now have a community garden. Local residents and our guests work side by side, learning from one another." In the afternoon, Olivia and Ethan gathered on the porch of the main house for a short break. William, who now spent long periods at the ranch, joined them, carrying Emily in his arms. "Sometimes I still wonder if all of this is real," William remarked, watching the movement of guests and staff across the yard. Olivia smiled, intertwining her fingers with Ethan's. "It's real, Dad, and it's just the beginning." Ethan nodded, his gaze sweeping over the property he loved so much. "You know what makes me the proudest? Seeing how the ranch has become a center for learning and preservation. We are not just producing food or hosting tourists, we are cultivating awareness." It was true. Hope Valley Ranch had become a hub for sustainable practices and regenerative agriculture. Schools brought their students to learn about ecology and food production. Researchers came to study the innovative techniques being implemented. At night, as had become tradition, everyone gathered around a large bonfire in the yard. Guests, staff, and local residents mingled, sharing stories and dreams. Liam Johnson, who was now not only a ranch hand, but also a talented local musician, played his guitar, filling the air with melodies that spoke of love for the land and traditions. Olivia, with Emily Thompson asleep in her lap, looked around. She saw Margaret Brown laughing with a group of elderly visitors, Benjamin Thompson telling old legends to wide-eyed children, Ethan Thompson discussing future plans with some local farmers. At that moment, she felt a wave of gratitude so intense that her eyes filled with tears. The ranch she once considered a punishment had become her home, her purpose, her legacy. "What are you thinking about?" asked Ethan, sitting down beside her and putting his arm around her shoulders. "About how blessed we are," she replied, leaning into him, "and how I can hardly wait to see what the future holds." Ethan smiled, his gaze lost in the stars above. "The future is here, Olivia, in every seed we plant, in every life we touch." And so, under the starry countryside sky, surrounded by a community they had helped strengthen and renew, Olivia and Ethan knew they had found something rare and precious. Not just love for each other, but a love for the land, for traditions, and for a way of life that, far from being outdated, was more relevant than ever. Hope Valley Ranch, with its ancient stories and new chapters, continued to thrive. A living testament that with love, dedication, and vision, it is possible to turn challenges into opportunities and a simple rural property into a beacon of hope. For the future. 20 years had passed since that night around the bonfire. Hope Valley Ranch, once on the brink of being forgotten, was now a beacon of innovation and sustainability, internationally recognized as a model of regenerative agriculture and responsible tourism. Olivia, now 55, walked through the extensive orchard she and Ethan had planted 2 decades ago. Her hair, now streaked with grey, shimmered in the afternoon sun. Beside her, Emily, now 24, carefully observed the fruit-laden trees. "It's amazing, Mom," said Emily, gently touching a ripe apple. "I remember when they were just saplings. Now, look at them." Olivia smiled, her heart overflowing with pride. "Just like you, my daughter. You grew up alongside this ranch." Not far away, Ethan, with his well-lived 60 years, led a group of university students through an experimental crop field. His youngest son, Daniel Thompson, 19, accompanied him, absorbing every word. "The secret is in the soil," Ethan explained, his voice carrying the wisdom of years of working the land. "Take care of the soil, and it will take care of you." Hope. Valley Ranch had become much more than a simple tourist venture. It was now a center for environmental research and education, attracting scientists, farmers, and activists from around the world. In the old main house, now transformed into a living museum of rural Brazilian history, Benjamin, at an impressive 100 years old, told stories to a captivated group of children. His memory, still sharp as a blade, wove narratives that connected the past to the present. "Look," he said, pointing to an old photo on the wall, "this was the ranch before the Great Transformation. And here," he indicated a more recent image, "is how it flourished thanks to the love and dedication of everyone." Liam, now a renowned musician and cultural ambassador for the ranch, was rehearsing with his band for the annual rural music festival he had founded. The event, which had started as a small local celebration, now attracted artists and audiences from across the country. In the newly opened visitor center, Margaret, at 95 years old, still supervised the experimental kitchen, where renowned chefs came to learn about sustainable cooking and native ingredients. "The secret to longevity," she said with a mischievous smile, "is never to stop stirring the pots of life." In the afternoon, Olivia gathered with a group of women from the local community. What had started as a small women's empowerment project 2 decades ago had turned into a successful cooperative, producing crafts and organic products that were exported worldwide. "When I arrived here," Olivia shared with the group, "I thought I was losing my freedom. Little did I know I was about to discover my true purpose." As the sun began to set, a special ceremony was being prepared in the large courtyard. It was the 20th anniversary of the founding of the Hope Valley Institute, a non-profit organization created by Olivia and Ethan to promote sustainable practices and support rural communities across the country. Guests from all over Brazil and abroad gathered for the celebration. Among them was William, now 85 years old, his eyes shining with pride as he saw the empire of kindness his daughter had built. "Who would have thought," he murmured to Olivia as they watched the crowd gather, "that the decision to bring you here would change so many lives?" Olivia hugged her father, moved. "You gave me more than a lesson, Dad. You gave me a new beginning." The ceremony was touching. Ethan and Olivia, side by side, reminisced about the journey of the past 20 years. They spoke of the challenges, the victories, the transformed lives. Emily and Daniel, now young adults, presented the plans for the Institute's future, promising to take their parents' legacy even further. When night fell, the traditional bonfire was lit. Around it, 3 generations of the family, along with friends, staff, and visitors, gathered to celebrate. Liam, his hair now grey but his voice as powerful as ever, led everyone in a song he had composed especially for the occasion. It was a melody that spoke of roots, of dreams planted and abundant harvests. Olivia and Ethan, hand in hand, watched the scene with full hearts. Their eyes met, and in that moment they remembered the city girl and the ranch hand they had been so long ago. "Every moment was worth it, wasn't it?" whispered Ethan. Olivia nodded, tears of happiness in her eyes. "Every second, and the best is yet to come."